started. Greg has a huge, like 23,000 guest Justice panel down the way. So we assume he ran a little bit long. My name is Aaron Sparrow. I'm a editor. I work on the Disney books at Boom, and if all goes well, we're working on the right here is Rob Paulson. You may know him. Is Jim Magon, co-creator of Rescue Rangers and trainer of TSU.
All I ask is if you're taking movies.
Did you guys see Mark and Bob in the witness protection? And speaking of Mark and Bob, Mark McCorkle and Bob Schooley, the creators of The Impossible. I guess the first question that I would ask it's the first question is for Jim. I got this one on Twitter. It's if you had continued with Tales of where would that story have gone? It seems like there were so many things that were like laid in there that didn't never finish out. Was the tension between Baloo and was that ever gonna happen? You know, was he ever gonna get the plane back?
We all have that problem. Yeah. No, actually, I don't think there was any arc where we were going to say, oh, we want to do this, and then we're going to go here. If you think of television as your favorite ice cream, let's say it's chocolate ice cream, every time you go back to the store to get chocolate ice cream, you want to taste the same, right? You don't want to do something that tastes like pistachio. So I think the success of these shows was it's new, but it's the same thing. So just more adventures, I think, is all I would say.
So if you got the chance to
well, you know, one of the biggest questions that we get asked all the time is, what happened to Mr. Cunningham? You know, is she divorced? Is he dead? And as my partner Mark Zaslav said, we will certainly tell you that it's going to cost us $150 and we'll let you know.
I was wondering that about Anna's mom. Or Anna or Andy. Mark, Bob, if you had the chance to tell more impossible stories, would you have other things that you'd be interested in doing?
Yeah, I think so. I think we always felt, because we tracked the relationship at the end. Yeah, we thought we could so I think we did.
I think we
You know, if they went to Riverdale,
That seems like something you would come to town today, the age group. Well, now everyone's I'm way past college.
Yeah, we have heard that, you know, when you go on Twitter, there's always somebody like, oh, I just heard somebody from the class. It's not elementary school. That's not.
I run into at least 3 or 4 if possible.
I never had.
Really?
I've seen the pictures on the internet. We've never, like 1 year, when Kim Possible was still on the air, I said, something comes dresses as possible.
A TV.
I thought it was Kim.
Yeah, there was a gadget outside, I saw.
Well, there's not. I mean, it's amazing. It's such a girls. A lot of boys love that show.
That old man.
And by guys who've been stuck on the internet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, if you guys go to search any Disney characters, after
You
this,
have to put on your safe
safe search. I had to send some work reference to James Bond, which was my first reference. Safe search. So yeah, let's see. Someone said this to me. Yes, why did I know this? This is so amazing. With technology where it is today, why are you not right now Disney about that? It seems like plenty of the
Disney is currently developing a live-action movie called Gargoyles about creatures who wake up in modern-day Manhattan and are befriended by a New York police detective, and they claim it's not based on their show. They've gone through at least 2 writers that I know of, and as far as I know, they don't yet have a script that they like, which I take as a good sign. I'm a little perplexed as to why Disney wants to write our show off out of existence and take the name and stick it on something that's so similar and yet not us. It's a little mind-boggling to me, but I have no inside information on why they're doing what they're doing.
Well, if only there were a writer that she'd write a good Gargoyle script. Maybe do somebody.
I have suggested myself on occasion over the last 19 and a half years, and actually, can you guys hear me back there? So actually, Michael Reeves was the story editor during the first 2 seasons of Gargoyles on the show, and back in 1995, they did hire Michael and I to write a treatment for a Gargoyles movie, which they then fired us off of. And back then it was actually a Gargoyles movie based on the show, but now it's not. And beyond that, I have no information. So I definitely think, with today's technology, you could make a phenomenal live-action Gargoyles movie with Keith David as Goliath and Marina Sirtis and Jeff Bennett and all those guys. I have no doubt whatsoever that we could do that. But Disney owns it. I don't know. Disney owns it. It's completely up to them. I mean, all these shows, if it were up to the people up here, they probably never would have ended. And it's just never up to us. I get a lot of tweets in particular really angry at me for canceling Gargoyles or canceling Young Justice or Spectacular Spider-Man as if like that was my call. Yes, I like being unemployed. Thank you.
We get the ones that accuse you, are you out of ideas?
What's the matter with you? You're very angry.
Yeah, very vitriolic.
No, I really, no, that's really, I do not know how these things work. We get that all the time, even in the comments, it's like, why the comics, why aren't there any comments? It's like, it's not up to us, you know.
I think, you know, in the old days, 65 episodes of something was enough that you could show it 5 days a week, all through the year, and then networks association felt that was enough. I think the new benchmark for a pretty big hit is that sort of 78, 80 episodes. I think the rare thing is a SpongeBob, you know, that's well over 100. You know. So I think it's one of those things we fans want to see more, creative people want to do more, but there's a business side of it that just, they say, well, this is what we need. And then later things get rebooted and things like that, like Ninja Turtles certainly has had multiple incarnations. The original one was huge and was, and then there were a couple reboots and then a current Nickelodeon reboot. Yeah, so, you know, sometimes that's what it takes too. A little bit of time goes by and there's nostalgia. You know, that people who did watch it originally maybe now have kids. And, you know, I have my grandchildren love watching DuckTales and Mr. Random. So it'd be nice, I think, if Disney was smart, I think they would reboot the, you know, like DuckTales would be a great season show.
Here's the good thing that they'll never call us.
No.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is that, you know, DuckTales just had Beach and Seth releasing the game with Capcom. So not only, you know, and I don't know the exact numbers on it, but I know one of the guys over, you know, that designed the game said it was very well received. So I believe they're actually working on some of the other Capcom games, like Rescue Rangers and maybe But you know, when you mention Ninja Turtles, this is literally a property that's never really been out in the public eye since its inception. It's been there in some kind of form. And yeah, it's like, and we'll keep eating it up. It's like, shut up and take our money. And so it's funny because it's such an evergreen property, and Disney has all these evergreen properties, and so many of them fall by the wayside. You know, and I understand wanting to do new things and things like that, especially now with Netflix and all of the ways you can deliver these products to people. It seems like the time is right for that kind of thing. No, I'm just kidding. Upset.
I want to say something real quick. I was reminded when you were talking about Disney making decisions. There's a line that Diane Keaton has in the movie Sleeper, where she says, "Who can understand the criminal mind? We're artists. We respond only to beauty." And I think that's who can understand the Disney mind.
I'm gonna try and talk a little louder. I understand there's I'm getting tweets from people saying that you can't use that.
You're getting tweets from 50 feet away.
That was like you're going off topic. You're blowing it. You're blowing it. So, Greg, I gotta apologize when I asked the Gargoyles question. I thought it was being funny. I didn't realize I was boring. So you did the comics. You got to continue the Gargoyles story in some comics through Slave Labor Graphics.
Yeah. We had a really good time. Got to tell what, you know, they did 2 seasons of Gargoyles and then they sort of fired me and did a 3rd season without me, more or less.
We don't count those.
I don't count those.
It's like the last season of Community. Nobody really counts.
I got to do a little bit of what would have been the 3rd season, and those trades are still available. 2 Gargoyles trades and 1 spin-off, Gargoyles Bad Guys, and they were Slave Labor. The Gargoyles book was Slave Labor Graphics' best-selling title. So they went back to Disney to renew the license, and Disney jacked up the license fee so high that even though we were their best-selling title, Slave Labor, SLG could no longer afford the license fee anymore. So that ended. So again, he's just pouring salt on the wound. I don't know. Was he doing this to you guys before I came in? But I had a great time doing the book, and I love Gargoyles. You know, that's my baby, and I would still be doing it if there were any way, shape, or form. But again, I don't own it.
I see you get those tweets all the time, Jim. It's like one recently, someone was like, "Why did you end Young Justice?" And you were just like, I mean, I can feel the beat like through the through the tweet. You were just like, I answered this so many times. It's just like, great. But I feel like that's, you know, kind of the way that animation goes. It's like the fans are so passionate about these things for whatever reason. Oh, the toy line didn't sell well. You know, retail, or they were sort of canceling the show.
No, I mean, our first season on Gargoyles, our toy line came out and they were selling great. And so we were a weekly show once a week, only on Fridays. We did 13 episodes. We wrote 13 episodes in 10 months. And then when they picked us up for season 2, they decided that we were going to strip across 5 days, so we had to write 52 episodes in 10 months. And that was hard. We quadrupled our writing staff, and it was still really, really hard. And then this other show called Power Rangers showed up. I don't know if you've heard of that one. But it just kicked our ass, really. It kicked our ass in the ratings. We were always a solid second place, but they beat us time in and time out. And their toys were late in arriving in the United States, so for a while we still had the number one toy, but the moment the Power Ranger toys hit, it was like we didn't exist anymore. And once that toy line went down, we were canceled. Then, again, they decided to do a third season because Disney had bought ABC, so they put it on Saturday morning. But they let me go, and I do think the show went down in quality. I mean, basically the whole staff was gone. Not just me, but Frank Parr, who was the other producer on the show, was gone, and so, you know, the toys weren't selling, and the show sort of had always had solid ratings, like a single or a double, not a home run. And then in its third year, it just tanked. So that was what it was. Not really. If we talk about then as opposed to now. I'm ready to die.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many people lived on Mead in Dearborn, Michigan?
Right here.
Okay. How many people went to Oakland University?
I didn't.
Oh, you go.
I didn't go.
Yeah, here's my question.
Here's my question. We come from a similar sort of Midwestern background.
Yeah.
How did you end up?
I hail from two cities that are both in receivership. Detroit, Michigan, and Flint, Michigan are both on the FBI's 5 most dangerous cities in the world. Both cities from which I hail. So you better hope I don't leave Los Angeles, because that's going to go under. Now that's how big my ego is. So that if I leave LA, it'll go wrong. So anyway, what was your question?
How did you get into voice?
Oh, thank you very much, Jim.
I don't know this.
Well, you don't know this? Hi, I'm Rob. I'll be your turtle and your Yakko and your Pinky and your Donatello and your... I'm very fortunate to be up here with this auspicious group of people, many of whom have given me work and helped me pay my mortgage, and maybe will in the future. Thank you very much. I grew up in Michigan and wanted to be a hockey player, and then fortunately, when I was about 17, I learned that I had neither the talent nor the temperament to do that as a result of some big, strong kid from Winnipeg who beat the living Christ out of me. And I thought, okay, so my next passion was to perform, and I moved to Los Angeles back when virtually all of you were not born. I didn't come here with the idea of doing voice work. I came here ostensibly to be a live-action actor and started getting work in that part of the business. And then I had the opportunity to read for G.I. Joe and Transformers back in 30 years ago. So those were the first shows I worked on. G.I. Joe, Transformers. It took me very long to realize that there are 1,000,001 average-looking white guys with SAG cards in LA. And so to be able to do a job in which I'm not limited by the fact that I am a middle-aged white guy, that it's wonderful. I have been so fortunate to work with these guys on shows. I think I did 3 or 4 your show. I did a whole bunch of things. You guys gave me tons of work, and I promise you, the best thing about this job is this: to be able to now. I think we touched on it a bit that we're all old enough to have been around for a generation, but young enough to still do this and be able to travel around and really reap the rewards of meeting you guys, like my beautiful friend Karina, who's here, and her dad, and I get a chance to actually come and shake hands with people who grew up watching what we did. And often now you get a chance to meet people and their children who grew up watching what you did. And by and large, it is a very happy experience. I say, hello, nurse. And you do that. And you do that. And so we are so profoundly grateful to have been able to pay our mortgages doing what used to get us in trouble in high school. And really, really, truly, it is profoundly gratifying to meet you guys. So thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to do that.
Will you do me a favor? Will you say my favorite Pinky line?
Well, it depends. I mean, is it a specific response to are you pondering or I'm pondering?
Yes.
Well, then, I don't know which one. Oh, yeah, okay, then you have to ask me. You have to say, Pinky, are you pondering or I'm pondering? You don't have to. Trust me, many people have done Maurice LaMarche. For money. So I guess, and he would love that. He would say, yes. Pinky. Okay, Aaron, you asked me the following question.
Pinky, are you pondering what I'm pondering?
I think so, Aaron, but if they called them sag meals, no one would buy them. Okay, we're doing this.
I know it did not fit. It's because, you are such an amazing,
Luckily, I'm an equal opportunity gig taker. Yeah.
When you walked in, did it say NARC in the script? Was that already
No,
there?
any of you guys know Eddie Fitzgerald? Or okay, Eddie Fitzgerald and Tom Minton were the two, and I mean this with all due respect to both of you gentlemen, they were the physical models for Pinky and the Brain. Tom Minton, if you know Tom, he's a wonderful producer and a talented guy, but he's a little kind of a dour fellow, right? And he's very incredibly bright, like an MIT Mensa guy, right?
His expression doesn't change.
But his expression doesn't change. And he barely speaks about like this. And he kind of looks like... I love you, Tom, you know. And Eddie Fitzgerald is kind of bouncing off the walls and used to say things in pitch meetings like, and then the guy comes through the wall and he does this, and then and so Tom Ruger and those guys sort of stole those little bits and pieces and incorporated it. So I didn't write any of that. All of those sort of Tourette's Pinkyisms were as a result of Eddie Fitzgerald saying "narf" and "blink." And so to this day, there are people, you know, and I've made my disability work for me. So there you go. But no, there are a lot of incredibly interesting, creative people in our business, and somehow that kind of stuff ends up, and now it's part of the lexicon. It's so crazy because we were talking about Rich Ahrens is here, by the way. Rich Ahrens, who, you know, worked and produced and wrote on Animaniacs and Tiny Toons and Pinky and the Brain and Biker Mice from Mars and all this stuff that I've had a chance to work on. He and I are back in there's an autograph section, which is in the back, right by where they empty the garbage. in the back of the convention center. And Rich and I were talking about this very thing, and this is something we all experience, and that is it's a very anonymous profession, but when you're in a social situation and people ultimately ask, what do you do for a living? And it happens to me on the golf course all the time. And the response is, no way! Are you kidding me? Dude, I'm golfing with Pinky! Man, he's been We all find out, people find out we do, and it's, Gargoyles, are you kidding me? DuckTales, no way! And it's really fun. It's great. It's cool stuff.
Just when you're golfing, they make you stop and make you mess.
Yeah, it's really, it always does, and you know,
I'm talking to, I'm finished trying to pop songs, and no.
that happens all the time. It's very gratifying. I just got done watching a hockey game with Raphael. Oh my God. He's still a middle-aged white guy. It's great fun. Great fun.
That should be the name of your
It is. My autobiography should be, Dude, your childhood was a middle-aged white guy.
I mean, would anybody in here be in favor of like me shutting up and you guys getting to ask questions? Would that be good? Yeah. How many questions do you have?
Right up, baby. Boom.
Please shut up.
This man is going to hurt himself. You don't have to.
All right, here's what I need you to do. When you come up, I need you to say your name, and I need you to project loud enough for everybody to hear you because you can see me only have 2 minutes.
Pat Jackson
Hi, Pat.
from South Pasadena. Mr. Schooley, Mr. McCormick, speaking of Disney live action adaptations, I heard somewhere that, like on DeviantArt.com, that there's a live action Kim Possible movie in the works starring Emma Roberts, who will be a very apt choice on that. Did she work with you on Hotel for Dogs, I believe it was?
No.
Not that we're aware
What's
of.
the long answer?
DeviantArt is
We actually wrote a live action Kim Possible back when we were in production, and that almost got made, and then they decided to do Sky High that we worked on instead. Why it was either or, I don't know. But, so we took that script basically and changed it a little bit. I think we had a nice launch of that, matter of fact. And it became one of the series finales. There were 2 because they brought it back the second time. So there's been some talk every now and then about a live action Kim Possible movie still, but it's talk.
We'd be open to it.
Yeah, we've always said we'd love to do it, but you know, and there is also, it's kind of always fraught.
We did the Gargoyle.
Fluffy duck.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah. Well, let me finish by saying that I think we're both cheated by not getting to do I read somewhere about just read mine, it was an alternate Kim Possible finale, a cut of Graduation, which I love because it pays homage to The Matrix, Casablanca, and The Naked Gun. Basically, she passes the pictures of her old friend and says, Renton's the name, Felix Renton. I better not catch any of you guys in Bilton. And then she finally patched those up fine.
Is there a basis in that? Yeah? By the way, everybody will be signing after the
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pat.
You don't have to walk over here. You can stand up. This is embarrassing.
I know, I was just thinking, great, it feels like we're in a parole here.
So the embarrassing thing is I'm not talking to the 3 gentlemen I know. Mr. Schooley, Mr. McCormick. Well, first off, my name is Rodney. I'm from Gargoyle. Nice to meet you all. I know these gentlemen. My question, this may be unfair, but I'm going to ask you to kind of get inside the Disney mind.
His head is frozen.
If anybody could do now, we'd all still be working on this stuff.
Go on. Kim Possible was kind of a merch machine. I mean, there's still Kim Possible stuff I can go buy at World Disney and a bunch of other places. I mean, it was nonstop through the show and after and so on and so forth. Shortly after Kim Possible came out, along came American Dragon, Jake Long. Zip. Any idea what prompted that?
Well, I think that they tried a lot. I think Disney Channel, Disney's a company, but Disney Channel in particular, had a real appetite for, let's find a property, an animated property that can drive a lot of merchandise sales. They thought, and we thought, Kim would be such a property. It was not. It didn't, there was merchandise, you know, there were party plates and dolls and things like that, that it did okay. I mean, I would say the Kim Possible merchandise thing was best summed up. It was a Walmart exclusive, and Bob and I drove to a Walmart, which I'd never even been in before. And
We're sorry.
so, no, we went in and we saw the toys there, and we saw an employee sucking going, just, and this is the soundbite we exactly heard. You know, a character we created was finally made into a toy.
And we just saw it on the display, Mark said.
This person's like putting up the dolls in here. So, and it's, so anyway, so to leap ahead, so I think, I think American Dragon was another kind of show they thought could do that, a mixture of comedy and action. You know, what happens with a company is when they develop a show like that, you'll pitch it to all different divisions of the company and licensing partners and whatever. And then people have to get excited, and sometimes they just don't. You know, I think the show that finally hit for them in that area, I think, was Phineas and Ferb. Phineas and Ferb finally.
Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
The sad thing is that Walmart employees now in charge of free money.
I do think one thing that's really changed since when we started the Disney Afternoon is the lack of a Michael Eisner. Because when I started at Disney, and Jim had already been doing this for a while, Michael personally chose every show. So when I was running series development at Disney, which is what I did until I developed Gargoyles and then moved over, every 6 months I'd go up in front of Michael with 5 or 6 shows, pitches, and he would kill most of them, which, you know, meant they're dead, but he'd pick 1 or 2, because he had to. Yeah, he'd pick 1 or 2, and what was great, and I don't think we appreciated it at the time, because what we'd see is he's killing 5 of our babies, you know, kind of thing. But what we didn't realize at the time is he'd pick 1 show, and he was Michael fucking Eisner, you know? So if every division either got on board or got out of the way, and then as conflicts started up at Disney between Eisner and Katzenberg, and between Roy Disney and Eisner and stuff like that, even before Michael left, he was accused of being a micromanager, and so he stopped choosing the shows, but he didn't choose one person to replace him. It became a committee who decided on which shows were going to go, and it's much, much harder to sell a committee on anything, because all it takes is for one person on the committee to say no, and you can watch like wildfire around the table as everyone starts to doubt and wonder. They don't want to be the one guy who said yes to something that bombed. And it really creates this culture of fear that the moguls didn't have to worry about. If you were a mogul, and Eisner was maybe one of the last of the moguls, if you said do it, everyone would just do it. And nowadays, everybody's got to agree, and then even when they all agree, you'll see 4 or 5 divisions sort of go, yeah, well, we were never that big on that. And so there's a lot of talk at these giant companies about synergy, but a lot of time it is just talk. And it gets very disappointing when you're working your butt off on a show, doing these crazy hours, and then you see that show's not being marketed, or it's not being licensed across the board and this kind of thing, and you don't necessarily see all the support. And that's what I really feel changed when Michael sort of stepped away and then ultimately left the company. And even a guy like Iger, who runs it now, he doesn't pick those shows. You know, he's way above doing that. It doesn't even probably occur to him to be the guy to do it. But Eisner used to personally choose which shows were going to go. I mean, he even told you to go make gummy bears, didn't he? I mean, when there was no show yet, it was just go make gummy bears, you know, and
Well, when a man and woman love each other. No, Eisner had literally just taken over the company a week or so. And we went to his house on a Sunday morning in Beverly Hills, and yeah, and he's taking numbers for the movie Country with Jessica Lange, because it had just opened. He wanted to know how the movie was doing, even though he had nothing to do with it. He had just taken over the company. So he sits down on the couch. His kids are in the kitchen watching TV and eating cereal in their pajamas. I mean, it was crazy. And he says, my kids just got back from camp, and they were talking about some candy they really like called gummy bears. And he looks at me, he doesn't know me from Adam, and he says, make me a show called Gummy Bears. and I'm thinking, we all afterward, we all went down to this coffee shop, and we said, is he insane? I said, we have a show where the main characters get eaten every week.
Maybe a show called Snickers.
Now, did Disney have to buy gummy bears?
No. Gummy bears means rubber bears. It's like saying jelly beans, okay?
Okay.
So it's a generic candy.
right. So, but if gummy bears didn't exist, gargoyles wouldn't exist, because one of the things that when we were developing shows is I love gummy bears, not the candy. I don't actually like the candy, but I love the show. And one of the things I loved that Jim developed was this great, rich backstory, this medieval backstory, and we just felt that the show didn't get enough respect, and we blamed Care Bears for that. We thought that there was a lot of confusion between Care Bears and gummy bears, because they were both multicolored bears, and one was saccharine sweet, and one was named after a candy, so it was easy to mix them up. And so we set out very consciously on Gargoyles to develop a show that would have that kind of rich medieval backstory to it, but that would get a little more respect. So we set it in the present, we made them gargoyles, which were a little edgier, we wanted that, and we developed this comedy series, this comedy adventure series called Gargoyles, with a bunch of cute little multicolored gargoyles, very much in the gummy bear vein.
Maybe that's the one Disney's making right now.
I don't know. And we pitched that to Eisner, and he passed. He didn't like it, but we thought there was something in the show, and so I showed the pitch to Tad Stones, who was the creator of Darkwing Duck, and Tad said, well, you know, they're developing this movie, you may have heard of it, Beauty and the Beast, and he said, what if you had one gargoyle who was sort of like the big, heroic gargoyle? Because we had a human female character who was the gummy bear's friend. I'm sorry, the gargoyle's friend. What if you did a sort of love story thing? And that sort of triggered something in me. And so we created this character, Goliath, who had not existed in the comedy development. And we took all the rest of the show and put it through this sort of prism of Goliath. It came out with the action show at the other end, and we got very enthusiastic about it. We did this huge pitch, and in those days, pitches were like art cards. You had like 40 art cards, and you had this spiel which you memorized, but presented as if it were completely ad-libbed. And like I said, I had to do 4 or 5 of these pitches, or 6 or 8 of these pitches every 6 months, so I had a lot to memorize. I think I did one for Quarks where they actually pulled Michael Eisner's toupee off partway through the pitch. That didn't go over so well. But so we pitched Gargoyles again, this like 40-card pitch for Gargoyles as this dramatic action show, and he passed again. And so we thought we were dead, because he passed as a comedy, he passed as an action drama. And so Jeffrey Katzenberg, and we had this sort of post-mortem meeting afterwards, and we talked about what he had bought, which I think was Goof Troop, but I can't remember. I mean, I just don't remember. I know he bought Goofy, but I don't remember if it was that meeting or not. But Jeffrey said, as we were standing up to leave, Jeffrey said, "Oh, and you're going to work on gargoyles some more." And I was like, "No, he killed it." And you know, and he was like, and Jeffrey was like, "Oh no, he didn't kill it. He just thought it needed more work." Now I've been in a lot of these meetings by that point, and I knew a kill when I had felt it through my heart, you know. But what that said to me is that Michael hadn't liked the show, but Jeffrey had liked the show. And in those days, Jeffrey wouldn't contradict Michael openly. But he wanted us to work on it. So we went back to the drawing board a third time and decided we didn't want to change the show at all. So what we changed was the pitch. We focused the pitch on the Beauty and the Beast relationship between Goliath and Elisa. We cut a lot of stuff that wound up coming back into the show, things like the Pack and Savarius and the Mutates and all that stuff. We did end up putting in the show, but all that had been in the pitch, but it was distracting Michael. It was getting in the way, and so we made it about this relationship between the gargoyle and the cop. And we went in again, and it was the same pitch, only a lot shorter and more focused. And we hadn't added anything. We just cut, and reordered a few things. And on the third try, so it took us a year and a half, on the third try, he bought the show. And when the meeting was over, Jeffrey turned to me and he said, "You added a lot to that, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes, I did."
I just want to say real quickly, when he talks about getting the show killed and you sense it, I actually we went back I think 3 times with a show called The B Players. And at one point, Jeffrey Katzenberg looked at me and said, "If you say B Players to me one more time, I'm going to throw you out that window." That's when it's dead.
The threat of defenestration always starts. But B Players evolved into Tailspin, though. So, you know, you never know. There we ripped for a while.
Okay, I have a quick question. If you had a chance, if they came to you and they said, "Hey, we want to do gargoyles,"
There's nothing in my career I would rather do than more gargoyles. I mean, and I'm doing Star Wars Rebels, and I'm having a good time, and I love it. And there's not a lot I would leave it for, but for gargoyles, I would. That's it for me. I mean, that's my thing.
would you pick up where you left off, or would you kind of repackage it for like the audience?
I get asked that sometimes, and it's such a vague hypothetical. It's so hard to say. I mean, you know, if they totally, you know, left it up to me, which they never ever will, I would, you know, probably make them rerun the original episodes, which I've watched recently because they released the DVD, and I hadn't seen it in 8 or 9 years, and it still holds up. I mean, the only thing that's sort of weird is no one has a cell phone. But otherwise, it holds up pretty damn well, and I would make them re-air those, and then we'd pick up right where we left off. But that's not what would ever happen, so it would depend on so many different factors, and they would sort of tell me, and you know, again, the odds are if they brought it back, they'd be like going, "Oh yeah, we could probably find someone younger and better looking to produce the show than Greg Weisman." So, yeah. Which I started doing, by the way. And the reason is, first off, only on shows that I produce, so that the voice director has no choice but to use me. But honestly, the reason I do it is that, you know, I did all those gargoyles, I don't ever see a dime from it, ever. So, like, when I did Spectacular Spider-Man, I just played this little character, Donald Menken, and so I get a check about once every 6 months for about $6.12 or something like that. But it matters, damn it. That $6.12 matters, because it's SAG. I'm a member of SAG. I don't think that the royalties that I get for Spectacular Spider-Man cover my SAG dues. But it's the damn principle in the thing.
Can I just say, so you're doing Star Wars Rebels, you have Vanessa Marshall in that show, right? She is.
No comment.
No comment.
We can't.
Oh, we can't? Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me, like I said, they don't have anybody on that show. Well, they would, maybe Vanessa Marshall. But I don't know. So forgive me, I just opened my mouth to change feet. I didn't know that.
Does that validate your question?
Yeah. Well, no, I just
just mentioning about.
I did play a stormtrooper.
Okay, good. We're talking about Disney, happiest place in the galaxy. Oh, wait, Hunter Thompson.
Hunter S. Thompson, ladies and gentlemen.
Fear and Loathing in Long Beach.
Are they based off of Indiana Jones and Magna
When they were designed, they obviously gave them this, you know, they gave them the leather jacket and the Hawaiian shirt, so, duh, you know. Okay, wait a minute, I have to poll the audience, because this is my favorite trivia question, and most people don't get it. Monterey Jack is a mouse. He has a pet fly that sits on his arm. Zipper. Does anyone get that? One person. Zipper fly. Most people look at me and go, ah.
That's how we know you want to know. You have a question, sir?
Yes.
All right.
First off, Rob Holding, man.
Thank you, my friend. That's very kind. Yeah, I see you got a turtle shirt with mustaches on. Thank you, by the way, and thank your parents for buying those action figures when you were a kid, because my kids' teeth are straight as a result of your Thank you.
And for Jim, I have a question for you. I know that there was a DuckTales movie that got animated. Have you heard any talks about the animated movie?
No, I don't, not that I recall. And that's the long answer.
Yeah, if I recall, I remember the DuckTales movie, for whatever reason, didn't do as well in theaters as they had hoped, and that kind of, then they kind of like.
That's right. I didn't know there was a plan for it then.
But the Goofy movie did.
Hey, you know what? Can I just tell you that Goofy movie did really well? The first one, and then the second was called an extremely Goofy movie.
I just watched that last night.
Did you?
My one contribution to the Goofy movie was, it was called The Goofy Movie, and I suggested that they change it to A Goofy Movie.
That's why he can't talk about what he's doing now. He's just that good. But can I just say that I thought that movie rocked?
I just, real quickly, I want to say that Disney extremely didn't call me for the sequel to the Goofy movie.
Hi, Karina. It's okay. Speak. You're back, girl. Actually, Marlon Thomas was in that show.
And you know the voice of that girl, which is very cool too.
I do. I probably do.
Tara's friend.
Tara.
First of all, I just want to say, unfortunately, I didn't get to watch a lot of these shows because I wasn't born until '98.
You have any idea what our collective age is old enough to get back to the Pleistocene?
So I don't really have a question concerning one of the shows, but I just want to say that, like, I know that you guys, each individual show that you guys have created, like Gargoyles and DuckTales, like my English teacher was just talking about DuckTales. And he said we should watch it for the whole second semester. So you guys, how do you guys feel that you guys are like individuals, just like all of us are, that you've made such an impact? Like Rob, oh my gosh, like you literally changed my life. I just felt really crappy at one point, and then like you sent me a direct message on Twitter.
Here, I'll take care of you right now. Take 100, Greg. I can give her 20. That's really sweet of you, Hunter.
No, it's you, not me. So, it's you. I'm not the sweet one. No, but I just want to know, how does it feel for you guys to like have such an impact on school?
Well, yeah, it's just really consistent. Thank you,
I
sweetie.
think when you're making these shows, sometimes you do forget, and you kind of have to forget that it's going out there to so many millions of people. So it is always great when you actually get that feedback. Whenever somebody on Twitter or somebody says, you know, it's on compliment about something I worked on, it really does mean a lot. Because you don't really hear it that often, unless you're Rob. Stopping by his house, but no, it definitely is what makes this worthwhile.
Yeah, it's very special. It's a special feeling. It's great.
Yeah, I didn't sign it, so it's worth something.
Sometimes it's the unexpected ones, like if you're traveling,
Yes.
you know, or like when we go overseas to visit animation studios. You know, if you're in India and somebody comes up to you and says, "Kim Possible," spooks you. Oh my gosh, people all over the world are watching this. So yeah, it's a great feeling. Right?
I've got more prints to hand out if anybody else wants to ask some questions. There we go. Free swag, and all of a sudden everybody's signing. All right.
Well, I do want to say that this is, we get no applause for what we do. When you're on stage, you get to hear the audience reaction right away.
All right. We're going to light it up. Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes.
As you know, step back just a little bit so the folks can see. Thank you for your question, Adam. Thank you for your question, Adam. The truth is, kind of like Greg has been alluding to, we have, as actors or producers often, we don't own the show. So anytime that a property as perennially successful as Ninja Turtles changes hands, the producers or whoever owns the property has a complete right to cast it and do whatever they want with it. And so we being the voice cast, were never involved in any of the permutations that happened after the first one. That's why it was so incredibly gratifying to get a shot at it again. And the first question I asked when my agent called me to read for the new Ninja Turtles was, do they know who I am? Not out of arrogance, but because I was on the original show, and I had had nothing to do with anything in the middle, so I didn't want to waste their time and go in there and they say, oh shit, that's right, he was Raphael, let's throw the old guy a bone. So unfortunately it worked out, but the reason is because, very simply, we have no control over that kind of stuff. That is up to each individual producer who gets a hold of the property.
You, sir?
Thank you.
Thanks. I think Bruce Wayne and Tony Stark were definitely inspirations for Xanatos. There was a character I had written in a comic book called Captain Atom. The character's name was General Ealing. And General Ealing was sort of a step towards Xanatos. And actually Captain Kirk was sort of Captain Kirk was a big influence on Xanatos. The idea of someone who never admitted defeat and who always had a contingency plan, and so it was that kind of, we just sort of said, well, what if that kind of personality, a guy like Tony Stark, a guy like Captain Kirk, a guy like Bruce Wayne, what if he were the bad guy? And so that was sort of where he came out from. And the fact that he looked a little like Frank's is true, but it's kind of a happy accident because we designed the character long before we cast Jonathan. And then later, when Jonathan was sort of on Star Trek The Next Generation playing Will Riker's evil clone, and he grew that beard and goatee, it was like, and I said to him, because we were still doing Gargoyles at the time, I saw the episode, I said, you were totally doing Xanatos as you played the evil clone. He's like, I was totally doing Xanatos. He did one episode of Wings, of the sitcom Wings, where he was playing this incredibly rich guy dating Crystal Bernard or something like that. And he was like this evil industrialist, and he was like, yeah, I would totally do Xanadu testing.
That's great. Guys, I wish we could go further, but we're out of time. We're gonna give the next panel a chance. Thank you all for coming out.